Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Pinball Arcade. Today we're looking at Centigrade 37, which, that's an interesting name because I don't know of anything that happens at 37 degrees centigrade. 32 degrees centigrade is when water freezes. About 40 degrees is where you would want your refrigerator to be, at least 40 below 40 degrees, because you get into that range of between 40 degrees centigrade and 140. That's the danger zone in which bacteria can grow. But otherwise, I just don't know what that could mean unless there was some kind of movie or something around that. Guess you could favorite things and you can highlight the table goals. I did look at making an account, and it popped up a website through the Steam overlay and wanted me to put in my email and all that. And I was just like, no, I don't think that's worth it. So you can check this. We want to complete the D lane, shoot the lit drop target, light double advance, score 25,000 points in one ball, and at that 100,000 points. This is a 1977 game, so we're moving up in the 8 years, and it seems like at that point, at 100,000, we are starting to see the war for higher scores go up and up and up. Centigrade 37, which came out in 1977, so that might be why it ends in 37 instead of 32, but that almost implies that it was 5 years late in its development, which maybe it was. It was designed by Alan Edwall and Gordon Morrison. A lot of these names feel like names of comic book creators in that they all kind of sound like New York guys, uh, New York white guys, for lack of a better description. And honestly, that's probably close to accurate. There is a Grant Morrison in comic books, in particular, that reminds me of that. This electromechanical wedge head table was produced by Gottlieb. Gottlieb. Uh, I've actually never heard it spoken out loud. I think you pronounce it Gottlieb, but Laib, it would be Gottlieb or something like that. I mean, you can pronounce that several different ways. Gottlieb as well. Stick with one of the best sci-fi art packages around. This game tasks players with filling the giant eye-catching thermometer on the back of the glass to score specials. The table also features a lane of parallel rollovers and double in lanes with switching lights to keep the gameplay moving. 1,600 units of this table were produced, which that is nearly half of the early 70s tables we've seen, where it was up to like 3,000. Um, and the numbers may be going down specifically because of the competition, older tables staying in play for decades. I mean, honestly, you could probably still find some tables from the 60s and 70s that are still very playable by today's standards if they've been lovingly cared for or if they've been in a warehouse for 2 or 3 decades. Um, so the competition probably went higher and higher as more tables got made, and thus less and less got ordered new. Let's see. Let's do a little table exploration. This definitely looks like a 70s sci-fi theme, and just in the last recording, the table before this, I said that that table was a Western theme, and it got replaced with sci-fi, and we could see that in pinball too. So you have a double in-lane system where it's kind of hard at this angle to see the metal divider there. And if you go down that outline, you apparently advance something. And then somewhat separated rollovers with the green dots, a sinkhole, and then a much more traditional 3 style bumpers, but you can notice that this bumper in the front is bigger slightly and offset from those bumpers. The little black bumper here is seemingly still just a black rubber bumper. And it seems like this might be the first game we'll see where we can actually choose which lane is lit when the ball is sinking down. Looks like we have a license sticker there, which would be the first game where we've seen a license sticker. You can see a lot of reflection on the metal. And then I guess because of the thermometer idea, this thermometer is going to fill up one way or another. It's probably not done with lights. It's probably done with a screw or gears, something very mechanical. And so you have this weirdly, very, very thinly animated lady apparently boiling the other sci-fi lady to 37 degrees instead of 32 degrees, which that still doesn't really make sense, and it feels like 37 would have just been a number picked out of nowhere. So it's sci-fi with blondes, early 70s sci-fi, with big old hair. No male hero, oddly at all. So I guess just self-insert yourself if this was made from a male gaze. And then in this one, they have only 10 lines of expert bits of information, whereas I imagine a lot of these, the actual dialogue of the expert hints are the same, and the only thing that changes is where it's pointing on the table, between tables. We've already seen the goals, and then the overall instructions. Not really focusing too much. The thermometer here would be interesting. To complete the thermometer, earn thermometer advances. Thermometer advances can be scored by shooting rollovers. Alright. So, doing several things increases the thermometer advances, which increases your score multiplier. A lot of these concepts are fairly well known by the time you've played a few tables. And as far as extras, we got a flyer, which again, this flyer feels like it's very square, like a record album cover. And these flyers would be the things that arcades would receive as advertisements to try and convince them to buy new tables. And you can see some of the selling points here. Scores to 199,000, 10 rollovers, so that they are getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And again, by the way the flyer looks, the art is not going to be as bright in reality as it is in this game. And some of that might literally be just the visual settings I've set up too. But there is just a difference from the paler, less colorful pigments that existed back then. Making a pinball table with a couple blondes definitely would be attracting the target audience. So we're just going to have a thermometer on the left and a score on the right, always, and that's somewhat distracting to have two heads-up displays and the pop-up heads-up display on the lower left. We are getting into closer to more standard more standard pinball tables now with the 3 bumpers and focus of a skill shot area at the top with 3 lanes, and that's pretty traditional. Starting to see more and more of things you would see. Still not seeing a center peg, and that advanced us 1. I'm also noticing that nothing is changing when I pull the flippers, so the lit targets are not changing because of me pulling the flippers, so I don't control it. It's the bumpers that are switching it around, which, okay, that's fine. It doesn't seem like anything switches around the lit targets at the top, and it seems like it's fairly easy to potentially get the ball back up to the top with the letter in lanes, the letter skill shot lanes. This also seems like they really wanted to emphasize that double out lane function on the right, and so they have targets to focus on. I just landed in B and it didn't. So yeah, that ball just zigzagged between the 2 lanes, almost like there was magnets there. I wonder if there are magnets there. Yeah, there's got to be a magnet there pulling you, because that ball would not zigzag like that unless it was designed to do that. And in that one game, I think I may have gotten 4 out of the 5 skill targets, and I just have to play a little bit better to get 100,000, and all of those targets will be done. And we're at a point now where we have a real table here with a lot to do. The fact that I could play a whole table, a whole game, and still do particularly well and not even hit certain elements. Like, I never even sunk the ball in that upper right sinkhole at all. Also, I am definitely not advancing the thermometer very fast. I didn't light up the A, B, and C. Of course, a lot of those things were probably just going to be expert things that the wizard goals will ask you to do. I didn't really focus on the drop targets on the left, which they are in a nice position because they're not taking up a lot of space on the back end of them, and yet they are definitely shootable. We do have a little bit of an issue. The thermometer is almost halfway full at this point, and that carries over. You do kind of have a bit of an issue where the upper field shots are tight, and I'm trying very hard to sink that ball, for instance, in the sinkhole, and it just doesn't seem like it wants to go. Maybe there actually isn't a sinkhole there. I might have to investigate the table some more. That is one of the beautiful things about really playing pinball in the real world, is that you can walk around the pinball table, and more than likely you are going to stand beside it and look at it and get your eyes very close to it so that you can see every element and from every angle. It's not just a flat screen where what you're supposed to look at is put right in front of your face. So emulating that in Pinball Arcade is appreciated to a certain level, that they try to do that with the table explorations, but I kind of wish I could zoom in a little bit further. I almost got the thermometer all the way, and I almost got that high score. So the real skill shot is clearly going to be getting the letter C. So you've got to get it to probably bounce back. We still are definitely having the experience of a lot of quick losses with no ball saver and no music playing or anything that could be a consistent tone instead of just ding ding dings. And pretty much pinball tables, oh, it's a magnetic hold, it's not a sync shot. Pinball tables pretty much still are at least 50% noise and direct feedback sound effects to what you just literally hit, and instead of playing a music backing track alone, although modern tables do often have music also, they mix the two together. Whereas there definitely are at least sequences in regular video games where most of the audio cuts out and it is a special sequence focusing on playing a song. There we go. We got that last 100,000 score. So I guess the question would be, can you in the same game start doing the expert wizard goals? Maybe. Complete ABCD lanes, score 5,000 from the saucer, score special, score 80,000 points on one ball, score 199,990 points. This is another table where you can't actually score. I don't even know what a D is, though. I just see A, B, and C. It does put you in a weird spot because you do know that you're possible that you will score the maximum amount of score in the first game you ever played if you just got very lucky. And it's interesting, it scores over 100,000, but instead of just putting another dial that goes from 0 to 1 and then could go to 2, they have a special light that lights up, which goes to show that even at that time having a dial was more expensive than having an LED, or not an LED, at that time it would have been a bulb, probably a halogen bulb, kind of custom size and shapes. That they weren't that custom. Halogen bulbs would have been used in jukeboxes and other electronics. It would have been fairly standard. Nowadays, any bulb in a pinball table could easily be replaced with an LED, but then you run into the problem of the fact that you kind of need a particularly bad quality warm light LED to replace any bulb in a pinball table, or you go with the cool bright white lights of a standard LED that most people would want, and you drastically change the way the table looks, which also can drastically change how you would film it if you were, say, streaming it. There is a small group of people that do stream themselves playing pinball on Twitch, and on a couple occasions I've checked that out, and getting the camera to adjust for the brightness of bright LEDs can be difficult. Still not really sure where the D lane is. Oh, it's way over on the left. That's a weird place to have the D lane. So that lane way on the left side that I just went through is D, and A, B, and C are at the top. So I'd have to get the launch just right. I'm not 100% sure what lines up the green lights on that magnetic target at the top there, or what even triggers the magnetic target. It could be the drop targets on the right, which I haven't been really targeting. Like, generally speaking, if you don't know what you're doing in pinball, you just go for the longest shot possible to get the ball as far away from the drain lanes as possible. And then as you start to learn the table and get a little bit better, you start to target real shots. I will say the bumpers at the top, the two blue bumpers, are not particularly well situated to help you fill in a lane. Maybe the magnet is based on what the trigger is triggered. That might be it. Yeah, it is. So yeah, I might very well be triggering the magnet some more here. Even though it seemed like that was also triggering itself just fine. Wow, that jumped the edge there. Or it jumped through an empty part. We have the thermometer at full, which, that's nice. I don't know what that really means though. See. Yeah, at this point I don't know if we're looking for a specific score or a specific target to score on. Plus, it is worth mentioning that, yeah, we kind of haven't seen any of the tables give us free balls. Maybe the very first one we covered, it from the 60s, gave you free balls. But a lot of these other tables have not had a just general score thing happen where you get a free ball. I've also not seen so many tables that have multi-ball. Like, and see, that got me to 183,000, and theoretically you were only supposed to be able to get to 199,990, but we can see on the high score that they are not following that rule. Literally, all I would need to do is have one good game here, and I would get all of the wizard goals done. And I am uncertain if there are any goals after wizard goals, or if that's just it. Like, frankly, 10 achievements per table is fine. That's not the reason you come to a game like this anyways. This is all about the pinball, and very little about any extras on top of that. And there might be an argument to making a pinball game or an arcade simulator game where you have a best friend character hanging out with you. You're eating pizza and drinking cokes and like talking about 70s, 80s movies, whatever time frame. Like, if you really are just trying to have a nostalgia simulator, occur, there might be a story you can have there. It may not be very good, and it would definitely distract away from the actual playing of the game, though. It would feel a lot like kind of the Life is Strange games, I would guess, where you just have this narrative and there would be sections where you hang out in an arcade. And then maybe there could be a no story mode to get back to the pinball. But that's all kind of a crazy idea to add any content like that, because if anything, I think Pinball Arcade did it as well as they could. I think they did have a fandom for pinball themselves. I think they spent all of their money that they could spend on licensing the recognizable popular tables. They didn't try to make something new like Pinball FX, where maybe they should have made a few tables that were new. But I imagine the programmers that made Pinball Arcade aren't that good at designing pinball tables, even if they love them and can play them fairly well. There's a big difference between a designer and a player. So yeah, if anything, I guess it's just a condemnation against the idea of the invisible hand of economics, that if there is desire, there will be enough profit to create that product and fulfill that desire, when that's often not the case. There's, for instance, rampant people who would desire like more better Star Wars movies. Some of the books, for instance, being turned into movies, and yet, while there's massive amounts of desire for that, that doesn't happen. There's, I think, probably still some rampant desire for more traditional original series and next generation style Star Trek series, instead of rebooted movie series and Star Trek Discovery and Picard style series, which go bleak and hardcore and just don't feel like the original two Star Treks. So you'd think that there would be desire for that. There's massive amounts of Terry Pratchett fans out there who would want more Terry Pratchett books turned into movies, and that hasn't happened. And yeah, there is a niche population. Maybe it's not really massive amounts of people, but there's definitely a niche population of pinball fans who could probably name another dozen tables they would like to see added to Pinball Arcade, and yet I don't think that's likely to happen. Some of the bells for this table in particular, not the best sounding bells. That they're a little simplistic and saccharine sweet, where I kind of like a harder, harsher ding. Not to make a pun, but there is kind of a heavy metal style in my mind that pinball tables should sound like. And when you're getting something that is just sounds like it's just a child ringing a little bell, it doesn't quite match my expectations auditorially, audio wise. This will be our last game, but this is also a case where this table could easily have been the first table where I would have gotten all the wizard scores. It would be interesting to see also if there is a pinball wizard challenge after wizard, or expert after wizard, or pro after wizard goals. I don't think there is. It is a bit of a sinkhole. I can't even tell if that one in the top left is a sinkhole actually or not. It looked like a sinkhole, but it acted more like a magnet. Honestly though, if there were 5 more challenges, I don't know what they would be for a table like this. We've practically done everything this table has to offer, and it's a fine table. This is something I could see myself coming back to if I wanted something fairly simplistic. I would say there's not much of a gimmick here. This all feels very traditional. This might be one of the first tables that introduced the traditional designs of this, and I would say a lot of tables that have double lanes take up too much space with those double lanes and aren't my favorite. Yeah, Centigrade 37. Weirdest part about that is the name more than anything else. Let's see. And the story means nothing and the art means nothing. Yeah, to me, that does look like that is a sinkhole. It's gotta be a sinkhole. Why did it just not act like a sinkhole so many times? Must just be a really tight shot. You can kind of see how the hole is not a round circle. Also, that like the wood itself has been kind of worn away or cut instead of drilled, so it's not quite a full circle. I don't know if that's intentional or if that was the table that they scanned and emulated. I imagine if you were going to scan and emulate the actual play fields, you would see all kinds of little mistakes that you'd have to come back. And so here you have a dial that's the number of times I guess you get the thermometer up, and then the ball's in place happens. And then suppose that green light, no, the green light right below the score, the green box, that would have been where it would have lit up and said 100,000. You can kind of tell that this is still trying to be somewhat family friendly for the 70s, because while they are in kind of tight spandex outfits, they're completely clothed from head to toe. You can see just the hands and the heads of the character. There's not a bunch of cleavage here. If this was a 90s table, you would see that lady. She would have been chained up in the thermometer, and it would be much more clear that this was something bad that was being done to her. Whereas you could arguably make the argument that she's sick and they're doing some kind of experimentation to help her. Yeah, I imagine the red thermometer is a either piece of paper in a ribbon tape that rotates and has different levels that are red, or it's just one big cylinder and it has 37 different angles at which it takes, and the first angle has only one red line, the second angle has only 2 red lines, and it just keeps going and going. And it might even be a full just like diagonal thing, but I bet it wouldn't be. I bet it would always be flat at the top, so that would be easier to see. 37 different degrees on a gear. Well, it would be 38 degrees because there would also be a 0 case too. 38 would make a lot more sense. Yeah, that's probably how I would guess that works. We've seen some reflections. This is a great example of what you really would get for instructions, though. So you are getting a better experience in this one way. No pinball table I've ever seen had like actual instructions that the player could see. So you either had to just ascertain what you're supposed to be targeting uh, based on what is getting pointed at on the table art itself, which is definitely taking up a lot. So it's funny that Gottlieb put their own logo on the art in that location. That seems weird. Uh, or you just have to play around. And in all fairness, most pinball tables would be played by kids that were just playing around, and there would be just nothing more to it. I'm mostly just playing around, and yet I've managed to get on the top 10 score list for most tables so far. Although, in all fairness, I do have off and on quite a few years of experience. Well, next time we're going to play Jack's Open and then Wild Card, so it seems like it's going to be 2 card gambling themed tables, which, yeah, they, I think, pretty eventually started getting away from the gambling themes just because of the accusations that pinball tables were gambling. So I bet when you start getting into the 80s, there aren't too many tables that would even suggest gambling. Yeah, I don't see a single table here. If anything, the 80s is more going for like edgy, macabre things with Elvira and Fireball and Haunted House and Cyclone. And there was a movie called Taxi, and I wonder if the pinball table Taxi has anything to do with the movie called Taxi, because that was a pretty dark movie also. And then when you get into the 90s era, it is just so many games. There are some edgy things from 90s like No Fear, but then there's just a lot of everything. Addams Family, Terminator, Dracula. And then when we get to the 2000s, there is basically no tables. I don't think I can justify, by the time I'm done with this series, though, purchasing the last few tables. I'd like to own them. We may check them out anyways, because there's free trials around them anyways. But yeah, actually purchasing them at this moment doesn't really fit into my budget, particularly when I know I bought all of these tables like 3 years ago and then forgot about them basically and never played them until now. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.